quiet. They're close.
I know.
Don't move.
He came home early. His maid grabbed him and whispered, "Don't make a sound." What she knew would stop your heart. Victor Harmon didn't survive Wall Street for 2 decades by being naive. At 54, with steel gray temples and the kind of cold, calculating eyes that could read a boardroom in seconds, he had built everything from nothing. A Tribeca penthouse that kissed the Manhattan skyline. A private garage housing 6 custom vehicles worth more than most people's entire lives. And Celeste, his radiant wife, 18 years his junior, whose love for his empire had always outweighed her love for the man who built it. Victor just hadn't allowed himself to see it yet. Before we get into it, drop in the comments right now. What time is it where you are, and where in the world are you watching from? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's continue with our story. October 19th began like 100 other mornings. 4 days in Boston for an industry summit. A brief, rehearsed kiss goodbye from Celeste. Victor loaded his charcoal Audi into the airport and didn't look back. But by noon, the conference had collapsed entirely, the keynote presenter hospitalized, the event abandoned. Victor was on the next flight home, for days ahead of schedule, telling nobody. That was his first stroke of luck. He didn't know it yet. His second stroke of luck was that his car wouldn't start. Standing in the airport parking structure, briefcase in hand, Victor jabbed the ignition button 3 times before accepting the truth. Dead battery. Completely unresponsive. He swore under his breath, flagged cab, and didn't bother calling Celeste. He'd deal with the car tomorrow. Right now, he just wanted a glass of scotch and his own bed. 4:41 p.m. The cab rolled to a stop outside his building. Victor tipped the driver without looking, straightened his jacket, and moved toward the private garage entrance, the side door reserved for residents, the one the cameras covered from 3 angles. That's when he saw her. She exploded through the service stairwell door like something was chasing her. Nadia, 22 years old, with deep brown skin and enormous dark eyes that, in 10 months of employment, had rarely risen above floor level. She wore her uniform, the black dress, the white apron, the small headpiece, but her hands, buried inside bright orange rubber cleaning gloves, were shaking so violently the latex trembled like leaves in a storm. She wasn't just frightened. She was terrified. "Mr. Harmon." The word barely made it out of her mouth. She crossed the garage in 5 steps, grabbed his forearm with both hands and pulled. Hard. "Come with me. Right now. Please." "Nadia, what on earth are?" "Please." Her voice cracked. She yanked him sideways, down between the rows of parked vehicles, toward the far corner where his silver Maserati sat under a dust cover. She dropped to the concrete without hesitation, dragging him down with her, pulling them both flat beneath the chassis of the car. Her orange glove clamped over his mouth before he could speak. "If they find you here," she breathed, her lips barely moving, "they will kill you. Both of us. Please don't make sound." The word kill landed in his chest like a stone dropped from a great height. He almost pulled her hand away, almost demanded an explanation, a name, a reason, because this was his building, his garage, his name on the deed. Then he heard the elevator. The doors opened with a soft chime, and the sound that followed was unmistakable. Boots. Heavy, deliberate, military-grade boots striking concrete in a measured cadence. Not 1 pair, not 2, 3, at least. "Fan out." The voice was low and controlled, a man accustomed to giving orders in quiet spaces. She said he drives a charcoal Audi. Confirm the space is empty, then hold positions. Through the 2-inch gap between the concrete floor and the undercarriage of the Maserati, Victor watched them move. Tactical boots, dark trousers, the casual, practiced efficiency of men who did this for money and didn't lose sleep over it. Audi spots clear, one of them called back. He's still in transit. Victor's blood went cold. His Audi was at the airport, sitting dead in a parking structure 20 miles away. These men had no idea. They thought he was still in a cab, still minutes out, still completely unaware. Good. A second voice, accented and unhurried. The moment he pulls in and cuts the engine, we move. 2 to the chest. 1 to make it certain. It reads like a carjacking. The building cameras on this level have been looped, 10-minute feed. We have a clean window. Victor's heart was slamming so hard against the garage floor, he was certain a vibration would give them away. 2 to the chest. Carjacking. Clean window. And then, the sound that would take years to stop echoing in his skull. Heels. Designer heels, striking concrete with the unhurried precision of a woman who owned every room she entered. Is everything set? Celeste's voice drifted through the garage like perfume. Victor watched her shoes stop near the center of the space. Cream-colored stilettos he had bought her in Milan. She stood with the men like she was conducting a board meeting. The moment he parks, we move, the lead man confirmed. Perfect. And there it was, something Victor had never heard in her voice in 5 years of marriage. Something flat and cold and completely devoid of the warmth she'd always performed so effortlessly. Take his watch, his wallet, his phone. Real carjackers wouldn't leave those behind. And I need 3 shots, chest only. Not the face. I have to make the formal identification or the insurance claim falls apart. The garage was completely silent for a moment. Then, what about the housekeeper? Celeste laughed. It was the most frightening sound Victor had ever heard because he recognized it now, recognized that it had always been in her, just carefully hidden. Nadia, please. I've been paying that girl a little extra every month to keep her mouth shut about my visitors. She knows how to disappear when I tell her to. And even if she didn't, who's going to take the word of a broke 22-year-old with no family over a grieving widow with a 7-figure estate? Beneath the Maserati, pressed against cold concrete, Victor felt Nadia's entire body go rigid against his arm. Her hand over his mouth began to tremble. But she didn't move, didn't breathe loud enough for anyone to hear. He understood in that moment what kind of strength that took. How long until he arrives? His flight landed 50 minutes ago. With traffic, another 15 minutes. Maybe 20. A pause. Celeste's heels shifted. We wait. He pulls in, he steps out, and Victor watched her hand form a shape through the gap. A pointed finger. A slow, deliberate motion. I become the wealthiest widow on this block. You take your money, you vanish. We never existed to each other. The boots dispersed. The garage went quiet. Victor lay motionless, his mind operating at a speed he hadn't experienced since his most desperate days, the early years, the years before the money, when survival required thinking faster than everyone else in the room. His Audi was dead at Logan Airport. The men were watching an empty parking space, waiting for a car that wasn't coming. He had time. A small, thin window of time. He looked at Nadia. She was already looking at him. And for the first time, he actually looked at her. Not through her, the way he'd been doing for 10 months. At her. Her eyes were calm. Terrified, yes, but beneath the terror, something extraordinary. A steadiness. A girl who had been invisible her entire life and had somehow learned to see everything. Her lips moved without sound. I called them. Help is coming. The silence lasted 11 minutes. Then Celeste's phone rang. What? Her voice sharpened instantly. A pause. What do you mean you're tracking his location? Where is the signal coming from? Another pause. The heels began to move. Back and forth. A caged animal's rhythm. That's not possible. He should still be 20 minutes out unless... The word died in her throat. Search the garage. The composure was gone. Raw panic had replaced it. All of it. Every car. Now. The boots thundered to life. Nadia's hand tightened on Victor's arm. The nearest pair of boots moved toward the Maserati. Slowed. A figure crouched down at the front bumper, lowering itself toward the floor, flashlight cutting through the gap. The beam landed directly on Victor's face. And in the half-second before everything erupted, Victor watched the man's expression shift from recognition to alarm. Found. FBI. On the ground. Weapons down. Now. The service entrance detonated. Agents in full tactical gear stream through in 2 columns, weapons drawn, red dots sweeping across the garage like a constellation. The main elevator opened simultaneously. More agents. A wall of controlled, overwhelming force. The 3 men barely had time to react. Within 30 seconds, all of them were face down on concrete, wrists zip-tied, a knee in each back. One made a reach for the weapon at his hip. The warning that followed left no room for argument. Celeste ran for the elevator. Those cream Italian heels, the ones bought in Milan on their anniversary trip, carried her exactly 4 steps before an agent caught her arm and spun her around. Celeste Harmon, you are under arrest for criminal conspiracy and solicitation of murder. This is a misunderstanding. She looked past the agent, scanning the garage wildly until she found him. Victor, standing beside the Maserati, covered in concrete dust, staring at her. Victor, tell them this is insane. He said nothing. There was nothing left to say. A woman in an FBI jacket approached them, badge raised. Mr. Harmon, I'm Special Agent Rivera. Are you injured? Victor shook his head slowly. Agent Rivera turned to Nadia. And you're Nadia Osei. It wasn't a question. We received your documentation package 2 hours ago. Photographs, audio recordings, financial transfer records going back 8 weeks. It was one of the most comprehensive packages we've received from a civilian source in years. She paused. You saved his life. Nadia looked at the floor the way she always did. Then, deliberately, she looked up. I just paid attention. Victor found his voice. How long did you know? 8 weeks. She said it simply, without drama. I heard a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. After that, I started documenting everything. I knew if I told you directly, you wouldn't believe me. She held his gaze. A housekeeper against your wife. I knew how that would go. Why didn't you just leave? His voice cracked on the last word. You could have walked out the door and never come back. Nadia was quiet for a moment. I grew up in the system, she said finally. 15 placements before I aged out. My whole life, I survived by being invisible, by staying small enough that nobody bothered to look at me. And I got good at it. Too good at it. She exhaled slowly. But invisible people see everything. And I thought maybe this once, being invisible could be useful for something. For someone. Across the garage, Celeste was being walked toward the service exit, hands cuffed behind her back, mascara fractured down both cheeks, screaming a name that nobody in the building would answer. Victor watched her go, without expression. Where will you stay tonight? He asked when the agents had begun clearing the space. Nadia blinked. I have a room in Queens. I'll be fine. No. The word came out before he finished the thought. Not tonight. Not after this. He already had his phone out. I'm arranging a hotel suite for the next week. And tomorrow we're sitting down to talk about your future, because you're going to have one, and it's not going to look like this. She stared at him. Mr. Harmon, you don't have to. You build a legal case against a murder conspiracy in your spare time, while working full-time, while living in fear that she'd figure out you knew. He looked at her steadily. You're going to study criminal law, and you're going to be extraordinary at it, and I'm going to make sure the only thing standing between you and that future is your own ambition. That's not charity. That's the only response to what you did tonight that makes any sense. For the first time since he'd known her, Nadia smiled. Not the careful, lowered expression she'd worn every day in his hallway. A real one, unguarded and fierce and completely her own. I wasn't trying to be a hero, she said. I just didn't want to watch someone die when I had the power to stop it. I know. Victor nodded. That's the whole point. 8 months later, Victor stood in a federal courtroom as the sentences were handed down. Conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation, wire fraud, financial crimes spanning 4 years of marriage. He wasn't watching Celeste. He was watching Nadia, seated 2 rows away in a charcoal blazer, first-year criminal justice student at Fordham University on a full scholarship, recently appointed as the youngest advisory board member of the newly established Scene Foundation, a nonprofit funding education and housing for young adults aging out of the foster system. She caught him looking, gave him a small, quiet nod. Outside in the afternoon light, walking down the courthouse steps, Nadia glanced over at him. If your car hadn't died at that airport, I'd be in a box somewhere in New Jersey, Victor finished. I know. Does it feel strange? The worst mechanical failure of your life turning out to be the thing that kept you alive? He considered it. It feels like the universe has a very specific sense of humor. She laughed. Or maybe it just puts you exactly where you're supposed to be. Flat on a parking garage floor with my housekeeper's hand over my mouth. Hey. She raised an eyebrow. It worked. Victor Harmon, who had spent 30 years believing that the most valuable thing in any room was the person with the most money, looked at the young woman walking beside him and understood, perhaps for the first time, what it actually meant to see someone clearly. Sometimes your life is saved by the person you look through every day without seeing. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone dismissed. And sometimes the worst day you've ever lived is the first day you finally wake up. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me below, the moment Victor heard Celeste's voice in that garage, what would you have done? I read every comment. See you in the next one.